The In Stuff podcast is brought to you by ScratchBand, the brand new way to help you stop touching your face. Why is everyone telling you to wash your hands these days? Because they're covered with germs. Every time you touch your face, you're helping to put those germs into your body and make yourself sick. Until now, ScratchBand's patent-pending design allows you to scratch your face with your wrist instead of your fingers, shielding you from those gross hands. Made of medical-grade silicone, you can sanitize it in the dishwasher, washing machine, or even a microwave. So stop touching your face and making yourself sick and join the evolution. ScratchBand. More information at scratchband.life. First of all, how was your week?
It was good. Wow. I was totally
beanbag.
Yeah, so my weekend was spent on a beanbag chair. There were some productive moments, but the highlights were in the beanbag chair.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how about your weekend?
The highlights are always in the beanbag chair. Oh, you need to be writing this down for your eulogy at some point. Just say, today we're here to remember Kristen Bouffard.
At this point, nobody's going to be in attendance, so
best
that's
times.
fine.
It'll be me and like 30 robot AI
30
girlfriends. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm by format polytechnic.
Wait, what inspired the addition?
Polytechnic means I'm open to multiple AI relationships at the same time.
Oh my god.
I'm not exclusive in the digital world.
It's becoming more and more confusing.
I'm a one-woman man when it comes to flesh and blood, but online... Oh my gosh. No. I can't wait. The future cannot come fast enough for me.
The more confusing it gets, the less attractive it is. Just a heads up.
But it's a digital world. It doesn't matter. Well, that brings up a good question that we'll have to debate when we talk about AI is, would you have a problem with a guy you were dating having an AI girlfriend?
Absolutely.
Multiple AI girlfriends?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's save that for later.
Okay. Also, if you take that to the logical end, your choice of format is appropriate because you're planning for a post-human world.
I am. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actively trying to create a post-human world. All right. Well, anyway, I had a good week. Today's, was a big day for me. And not to turn this podcast into one giant ad for something I invented, but my scratch bands are arriving in the mail today.
It's a big day.
And so I'm not going to talk about them every episode other than pretending that there's some third person sponsor. It's just me sponsoring this podcast.
Right.
But what, I don't exactly remember when I started working on them, but it must have been, so let's see, March is when things locked down. It was probably May. So I would say we're coming up on 10 months.
Which is a long time, but it's pretty, that's rapid prototyping.
Well, it was supposed to be ready by October. That was the original plan.
That would have been impressive.
And that would have been, really impressive, but stuff happened and I didn't really know, obviously, what I was doing. This was the first time I ever invented and actually made anything. But they're coming in the mail today.
Yay!
Over 2,000 scratch bands that I will be assembling like a sweatshop worker in my own sweatshop while I watch 80s movies. So, it's interesting. We'll see, but it's a whole new chapter of my life I'm excited about.
Good.
And, so we'll see what happens with that. But today's a huge day. I'm going to smoke, as I told you, one of the Cuban cigars I bought in Chicago. I don't know where that came from, because it sounds like cigar. I got in Mexico a year ago, almost to the day. Yeah, I was like, I'm going to, because obviously they're easy to get there. So I got 5 Cuban cigars, which I don't even really like cigars that much, but You just, as a guy,
Really?
Cubans are the most coveted type of cigar.
So of all of the ways to celebrate, you're doing something you don't particularly enjoy?
Yeah. Because the things I do enjoy, I do every day. I don't need to celebrate.
Sort of a reverse celebration.
Every day is a celebration for me. But this is a particularly special one.
I'm excited, so it's going to suck.
Yeah. So anyway, sometime maybe in the next 4 hours, I think 3 boxes are going to arrive. The world is never going to be the same.
If they come during the podcast, are we going to have to stop?
Oh, are you kidding? Absolutely. Because those hands are going to go to work, sister. Like, you want to do this podcast? You better put together some darn scratch bands.
Oh my gosh.
Be like, what's that sort of rubbery, plasticky sound in the background? It's Rob and Christen assembling scratch bands. Anyway. Yeah, so it's well, there's so many different directions I want to go. First of all, the topic for today is VR, which I am super pumped to talk about because I love VR, but yet I don't do it very often because I'm too lazy to get off the couch.
So that's a thing, but you made me define VR or AR when we did last week's topic.
Yeah.
So would you define VR?
It's virtual reality. Well, that's just, don't give me that look. Once again, podcasts fail to communicate the entire breadth of the communication that happens. But okay, so I like to start from the ground up. So virtual reality, virtual on its own, honestly, it means like basically the same, right? We say these cookies, these Reese's Pieces dippers, which I'm going to try in a minute that you brought, they're like virtually crack, right? So virtually means almost exchangeable.
Yeah, but I'd define virtual as artificial.
This is where we get bogged down.
I know. Academia. This is our difference.
I define virtual reality as I assume computer generated. I guess in theory it is an artificially generated version of a world that you can interact. Well, is a 360 2D picture VR?
Well, they had those old cave technologies that were immersive. So on the continuum of virtuality, those immersive caves they have a place. So yes.
Okay.
It's not outright virtual reality, but there is an element of virtuality happening there.
In the cave? Mm-hmm. What cave?
I forget what the acronym stands for, but do you remember on campus, we used to have a cave in the basement of Rasmussen? It was like the supercomputing center.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Had
this space where it would project an immersive environment, and it was human scale, so you could walk inside of it.
So like Fahrenheit 451, where you've got like projections on walls you can interact with?
Yeah.
Wow, they had that down there, huh? I never saw that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they have it anymore.
So that's virtual reality. So I think when we think of virtuality, we think of headsets because it's just super convenient. You don't need a lot. Oh, you don't think that's virtual reality?
I don't. We should have this conversation because there's a continuum of virtuality that we should address.
Okay, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because putting your smartphone in a Google Cardboard and holding up to your face technically is virtual reality. As opposed to, going into maybe a VR game place where you can walk around in VR more.
Or as opposed to being like one of those old time multi-user domains where it's like a text-based virtual game. Where
is that VR?
It's not VR, but it's an immersive experience. Mm-hmm. So maybe another question for what is virtual, if, does it need to be technology mediated? I would say for contemporary purposes, yeah. But if you think of other immersive environments, dreaming if you want to get really
Is the Peter Pan
existential.
ride at Disneyland, is that virtual reality?
I don't
Because
know.
I'm like in a boat flying over the island and
But that is reality. It's a
Right.
fantastical reality. But that's reality. Like you're in a stage that's in real space.
right. So to be virtual is it can't actually exist. All right, but again, we're going to what my definition is. So my definition is a computer-generated world that you can immerse yourself in
Yeah.
is virtual reality.
I think the immersive aspect is key too.
Right.
Right.
And so that would cover, a 360 picture. You put your headset on and you can look in all sorts of different directions. It's not 3D, but you kind of feel like you're there to a degree. It feels like a virtual world. Some do better than others. Google Cardboard is a really lousy VR, but the Oculus stuff is pretty amazing. And then if you were to go, beyond that with some higher end VR stuff, but
I know. Like, what would be the ultimate VR experience to you?
the ultimate VR experience would be the holodeck.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that the ultimate VR experience would be like placing your brain in a jar and connecting it directly to a network,
The singularity.
essentially.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
I like the
Way to
holodeck.
set me up. Yes,
Boom.
you're right. Okay, I guess the singularity, my brain uploaded. So basically, the TV show Upload, or
I like that
they
show.
deal with that. Yeah, I love that show. Or Black Mirror, they deal with that in a number of different ways, which is a really weird way. Speaking of which, before we get too far into this, one of the things that I'm hoping for from this podcast is to get ideas from you and from listeners, if they want to message us, of cool books, movies, other podcasts, things that relate particularly to future tech. That's what I'm super interested in, just dying for more content on. So I was a late person to come to Black Mirror because I didn't really understand what it was. But once I discovered it, I was really hooked. Although it's a really brutal show to watch. So if you're sort of a sensitive person, I wouldn't recommend Black Mirror. But the issues it comes up with are really awesome. And I think in today's show notes, we can put up some of our favorite episodes that are interesting, but we might also want to put a little warning on there. Because every episode generally has some disturbing content.
It goes
So,
dark. There are dark
yeah.
places.
But Upload is a more, I forget if that's CBS or something, but
Upload is it's on Netflix,
okay.
if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
or on Amazon Prime. Anyway, it's the first science fiction, almost romantic comedy that I think I've ever realized I was watching.
It is, if you love future tech, it's pretty awesome for that. There's some, modest sexual content, so I don't know if I'd, have my 8-year-old watch it. But generally speaking, it deals with future tech in some interesting ways. But as I have seen with films like Her and other future tech movies, they pick and choose which tech super advances in the future, and then act like nothing else happened with other tech. So it gives them this sort of poetic license to create problems that technically, no pun intended, other inventions would have solved. Like in Her, another great movie to watch if you're into future tech. The problem is that the AI he falls in love with can't take physical form. Well, if AI has gotten that far, then so has robotics, so has virtual reality, so has augmented reality. So this problem of AI having to basically bring like a woman into their relationship to serve as a surrogate, a physical surrogate, to me is just like, no, you can't pick and choose.
There's a recent movie that actually does that, and I told you about it a couple weeks ago, and now I can't remember the title. Is after I finished Upload as a series, and I also watched the movie, this other movie, which I'm not going to be able to...
It'll come to you.
It'll come to me, yeah. But yeah, so in that movie, they're specifically talking about being able to upload, well, actually a person, to an artificial body, which would solve your problem in her.
Yeah. At any rate, this is why we call it the In Stuff Podcast, because it just goes.
We're still talking about things movies. I haven't watched her yet, so I want to watch that.
Definitely watch her.
We're talking about virtual reality, and I'm curious because there is a quintessential virtual reality, book that you should probably read if you haven't, if we're going to talk about virtual reality.
Okay. Well, it's going to take me a minute to read it. So,
have you read Snow Crash?
No.
By Neil Stephenson?
Never heard of it.
That's one of the earlier, not the earliest, but when people think about virtual reality, that vision of virtual reality is popular, and it's inspired people who have gone on to work on like the Oculus projects.
Okay.
And things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that Neil Stephenson imagines in this book, but essentially you have the real world, and then there's this metaverse that people can connect to virtually, and so there's this whole other life essentially that people have access to that is, you could think of it like our internet. That's the analogy we have now, but it's a different kind of space. So the hero, literally, like, this is also a satire on cyberpunk kind of stories, but the hero, whose name is actually Hero, protagonist, he is a hacker, and in the real world he lives in a storage unit, but in the metaverse he has a lot of power, and he's the greatest swordsman in the metaverse.
Sounds very Ready Player One.
Ready Player One was written after Snow Crash. It's very inspired by Snow Crash.
Maybe a little derivative.
Well, no, it's
Okay.
It's not derivative, but there are a lot of things, a lot of ideas that continue on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we drop Ready Player, which actually is a good VR one to talk about, actually, but just for the record, the DeLorean in Ready Player One has the hood mounted wrong. The hood on the DeLorean opens forward, so, it doesn't open towards the back, which you see when the DeLorean is racing in the Ready Player One movie. Every once in a while, the hood pops up a little bit. It's not the way it opens. People do a freaking little bit of research. Anyway, I guess it's a VR car, so they can make it open. But that's the stuff that irritates you when you're a DeLorean owner. Like, come on. Anyway, so one more time on the name of that book?
Snow Crash.
Snow Crash. That sounds great.
It is a good book.
Okay, good.
It won a Hugo Award.
You're so much more well-read than I am. I'm like, why would I read about future tech? I want to see future tech.
Well.
Anyway, if you've seen something cool that you want to recommend to us, I'm just dying for more stuff. You gave me a couple more today that I cannot wait to watch. TV shows and movies.
There are other movies that you should probably watch too, I think.
Okay. Well, the ones you told me about were Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams on Amazon, and then the movie Tenet. What else would you recommend for folks?
Have you ever seen the movie Until the End of the World?
No.
I think Wim Wenders, he's the director. This is an early, I think this was a 1992, 1989, 1991 movie.
Okay.
And there's VR in this movie, but it's not for the purpose of VR. There's so much happening in this movie. It was shot with 20 hours of footage, essentially. And then turned into, there are a bunch of different cuts. There's a 5-hour cut, and then there's the actual 2.5 hour.
5 hours of 20?
There's a 2.5 hour version too that they released.
Okay.
And I think that's the version that I got a hold of. This was like right when I graduated from high school, I watched it. However, one of the plots in this story is there's a guy who is essentially trying to record his dreams because his mother is blind and he wants his mom to be able to see. So he has this device that enables him to record his dreams, and it looks like a virtual reality headset. And this part of the story is him just going around they're traveling across the globe for other reasons too, but he's also trying to record all of these pictures. And then he becomes addicted to watching his dreams.
Weird. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would get addicted to watching. I've had some trippy ones, but usually they're not anything I want to relive.
I don't think it's something that you can avoid.
Oh.
Like it's not self-aggrandizing, if that is what watching your dreams is. It's more something you can't help. Like watching your dreams just becomes an addictive thing. And there's a lot of other little glimpses of future tech in that movie too that are really neat to see. So it's cool that way.
All right.
There's that.
Great.
And Surrogates, of course, if you've seen Surrogates. It's isn't it an Arnold Schwarzenegger? No. It's
thinking twins.
It's it's Bruce Willis.
Oh, okay.
So in this particular world, people don't interact with each other in real space. They all get in these VR chairs and they have avatars that they drive through space. Well, through the real world, and they like go to work that way and do all of their stuff that way. And then there's a counterculture, of course, and the plot thickens.
Cool. All right. So I think over the course of the podcast, we'll throw out more things as we find them to recommend, but we would definitely love to hear from all of you. Fortunately, Christen today has got me hooked up with enough material to last me a while. But there was that time you recommended Tropic Thunder, which made me question your taste in movies.
Are you kidding me? How do you not like Tropic Thunder?
Exactly. Oh. All right, let's talk about talk about VR. So you have done so much work. You were emailing me things, and you put all these notes together, and I just...
You've had more VR experience, actually, in goggles.
Tapping into the fact that I've done a lot of VR, that I was sort of going to just do that instead of make a lot of... I don't know. I was distracted. It's spring break right now, and I was busy last week getting ready for this.
So you are excited about VR. You have 2 of the Oculus headsets, right?
I do.
And do you spend a lot of time there? Like, what do you like to do in virtual reality?
It's been a kind of hot and cold thing. There've been times where I would do it every night for hours, and then there are times where I just won't touch it for quite a while. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to being in my 40s and being tired a lot. They're just like, I don't want to get up and do stuff, like walk around in a game. I just want to sit down and veg, which kind of, I think, is I'm not the only one who deals with this, because I think it's partly why 3D TVs failed. People are like, I don't want this much entertainment. Even though we can have, it's too much entertainment. And there's also a trend today, and I'm, again, sorry to go off on another rabbit trail, of people don't just do one form of entertainment. And VR basically requires you to just do VR. I mean, you could technically have earphones and listen to something else while you're doing VR, but you can't see, or you can't multitask very well.
No.
And from what I hear from students and what I see from my daughter, who's a teenager, and myself often, is people are bored by one form of entertainment now. We need, and I don't think this is totally new. I mean, this goes back to, somebody knitting while they watch TV.
I don't know that they're bored, though. I think that I do this. This. Like,
you do this too? It's called media multitasking, by the way.
If I do some metal work, I will listen to a book.
Right.
So are you doing metal work for entertainment? Well, I'm doing metal work because I enjoy it. It's okay. It's a thing I enjoy doing. But I really like having, I have to have my eyes to pay attention to that, but I don't need my ears, and so I can listen to a book.
Okay. Do you watch much? Do you even have a TV?
I have a TV now. I used to not.
Right. Do you watch TV? Do you do things while you watch TV?
Not so much.
Oh.
Now when I sit down and watch TV, unless I'm doing something on my laptop, and I'm facing, it really depends on how much eye time I'm willing to dedicate to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Normally, if I sit down to watch TV, I really am looking for an escape.
Right. I mean, what my daughter does is she plays like a game on her phone while she watches her favorite TV show, which she's already seen pretty much every episode. And so to me, this is a bit of a concerning thing, although I see myself doing it often too. Like I used to play Kerbal Space Program, which is a super fun, open, I guess you call it open world, space exploration video game where you can build your own rockets and shoot them off to the moon and explore the universe.
That's cool.
Super cool if you're into that stuff. I hardly recommend it. You can download it from Steam. But just playing that game was felt like not quite enough entertainment for me. Also, mostly living alone, and I don't know if that affects the feeling of just wanting more sound in the house sometimes.
Are you playing that on your computer? Or are you
playing that on my laptop while I would have some low intensity program on TV playing in the background. That was mostly there as just kind of like a baseline entertainment. It was felt like but it also comes from a habit I've felt where I need to watch a movie every night, or else I feel like the day has been wasted. Anyway, not getting too far from the tangent. This still relates to VR in the sense that VR does not allow you to media multitask, which is one of the reasons why I struggle with it a little bit. And one of the things I wonder if it's going to be an issue for VR in the future, because consumers generally want very multiple, pretty low intensity forms of entertainment at once, in my experience.
Yeah.
Is there just a giant bird that flew by or something?
Yeah.
You just look how like a pterodactyl had flown by.
I think it was a grouse.
Probably. Oh yeah, we have grouse or gray jays sometimes. Gray jays look monstrous compared to all these red poles. But anyway, yeah. What do you think about this media VR and media multitasking?
There's not too many times where I would set time aside to be in an immersive virtual experience. Mm-hmm. I've gone to the VR arcade.
Mm-hmm.
And
those are toast, by the way.
They're toast?
Yeah. VR
Wait, is
arcades,
that good?
No, that's bad.
Oh.
VR arcades are like regular arcades from the 80s. They were great when you couldn't do it at home. Anyway, I just wanted to...
So you don't like them?
I think they're awesome, but I cannot see those things lasting another 5 years.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I've been to one, and it's fun to, to play with a bunch of people, especially a bunch of people I wouldn't normally invite to my house.
That's always good.
Right. So it's good for that.
People I kind of want to hang out with, but I don't want you to know where I live.
Exactly. So it's always been a fun experience, but it's not something that I get that... It's almost said it's not something I get a hankering for.
A hankering? Man, I got a hankering for some
I
VR.
never get a sense where I'm I haven't had...
Where's Oculus? I love that word hankering. I don't hear it very often.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't ever sit down and go, I just really need to be in an immersive space. That just isn't something that I want. But when I'm there, so you let me borrow one of your Oculus goggles.
I loaned you the original Oculus Quest from Facebook. Yep.
Okay. So this week, and so I sat down, I made a point to schedule some time, just get back in. But it takes a long time.
It's VR now.
You have to boot up a computer, you have to set up Wi-Fi, you have to make sure you're connected, and then you have to set the boundaries for your space.
Okay. Yes.
And then, it took about 5 minutes the first time, and then it was maybe a minute to get started every other subsequent time. Mm-hmm. And then once I was in there, it was fun. I watched a movie. I kind of liked the home space. I was kind of just happy in the home space in that geodesic environment.
Yeah. I forgot that you have my YouTube or my Netflix account in there. Stealing my That's why I couldn't watch Netflix the other day. It's another account being used. Oculus Quest. Kristen, get off my Netflix.
I'm watching movies on my headset.
Anyway.
Yeah, so it was fun, but I didn't feel like I was, I did it a couple of times, but it wasn't I have to finish this thing so I can get back into VR. Mm-hmm. That's just not, it's not a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I get exhausted wearing them too. Like, they're heavy on my face. They feel a little awkward. I occasionally found myself almost stepping on my dog.
That's a real danger that they warn you about.
Yeah.
Is loose pets when you're walking around, fighting dragons or whatever. Yeah, and there was a certain way to put it on that I didn't show you any of that, but they do recommend strapping it on your head in a certain way, I think, to try and minimize pressure on your face. And so I didn't really give you any of those tips. So it could have been that maybe
I didn't really super customize it.
Yeah. It could have been that there might have been some more ways to make it more comfortable. Yeah, so
What's your favorite thing to do when you're in there?
That's changed. So right now, I'd say if you're like, Rob, I demand that you play a game in there right now, it would probably be the flying game, which
wow.
I'm getting very confused with the Super Nintendo Pilot Wings. It's called something else, but it's a VR flying game, and it's the first time I've been able to do a flight simulator where, as you're flying the plane, you can look left and right, which is, as you can imagine, helpful when flying.
Right. You need a peripheral.
Right.
Anything. You
Right.
need peripheral vision.
It's like driving when you can't, look left and right. It's just like, it's less fun and less realistic. And so that app was awesome for helping me kind of scratch that flying itch that comes when you're a pilot but can't really afford, or I guess it's not that I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars per hour to actually fly a real plane. So that's one of my favorites. But one of the things I got into that I would still love to do if there were more seasons was watching Black Mirror in VR, because that was like, you talk about immersive, like, as super awesome. You're sitting in this virtual living room watching a giant screen playing out movies about all the horrible things that could happen with VR.
Wait, let me see if I understand. You're in your living room, but in a virtual living room.
Exactly.
Watching.
Well, I could just as easily take the headset off, and although there's some times when my daughter was around where it was nice to be able to watch my own movie.
Okay.
So it's basically, and there's my dishwasher. We discovered a pattern in this podcast that I get the urge to do dishes every time. And we delayed that one time for like 45 minutes just to avoid this.
It never happened.
Who cares if the stupid dishwasher makes a noise?
Right.
But so it's interesting in that sense that it can be a separate experience. So she could do her homework or watch something on her own in the living room, and I can watch my own thing in my own virtual living room, which is another bit of a struggle with VR in that it's a little more difficult to have a shared experience with it, but it's totally possible. But
is that why you have two?
No, I got two because I wanted better resolution, and the original Quest, I wanted it to feel more real. And I felt like it was just too pixelated. It was too obvious that this was not reality. So when the Oculus Quest 2 came out, it was cheaper than the original at I think $300.
Nice.
And a better resolution, and I was super excited about that. So
do you play any games, or do you do any of the experiences with other people?
I haven't yet, but I am working on that. Because I have another friend who's got
working
Quest.
on the friend part? Or are you working?
I'm working on making a friend.
Aw.
It's not going so great so far. No, I got a friend who bought one after I came over to their house and showed them the original Quest. They were all like really excited about it, and
so that's really exciting.
Over COVID, they bought one, and so I'm going to try and I've downloaded some social interaction games to see if we can hang out via Oculus over COVID.
Yeah.
But we do sort of aim to have a format for this show. We don't worry about it too much, but one of the things we wanted to do was to talk about the history first. So I want to see if we can, before we get too far into this, jump into the history, your history with VR, which I guess we're kind of talking about, but your, like, the early days of VR from your perspective and
My
what you
personal
found.
history or the early history as I know it?
Both.
So I am not super into the early history of VR. I'm familiar with the Jaron Lanier is the name that I've kind of just run into as I've interacted with bits and pieces of information about virtual reality, specifically for education. So this comes up in my day job, just thinking about how virtual reality could be applied to education and learning experiences and things like that. So Jaron Lanier is known as the father of virtual reality. And he's worked on a lot of the projects that are running now, and he also is still working, like he's still involved in virtual reality projects. I feel like virtual reality is really contemporary to my life. It's kind of a technology that's come up while I've been alive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you too, we're about the same age.
Yeah.
And the things that have happened beforehand are, I mean, the examples that I have in my head are kind of few and far between. There's some books in the 90s that I've read, and also Snow Crash. There's the holodeck that you mentioned in Star Trek, which is kind of like my earliest memory of something that I would consider virtual reality. But then professionally, it kind of got caught up in things I was working on in like 2016 and 17 when virtual worlds were kind of coming out, things like Second Life.
Right.
And augmented reality was really part of that hype cycle where people wanted to have these experiences that were kind of new and developing and exciting. And virtual reality also kind of fell into that genre of things because people were developing new glasses. They were actually in a form factor that was portable and easy to kind of carry around and have on you, but not so heavy that they were as onerous as they had been in the past, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's my interaction with VR. I don't own a pair of VR goggles. I don't have any aspirations to. Really, I enjoy the experience occasionally, but it's just not something I feel compelled to participate in at the moment.
Okay. And just briefly for listeners, I want to explain that my cat is in my lap, and that's why occasionally you might hear a bang against the microphone when it whacks its tail against it. And you also might hear some subtle purring in the background.
It's the ASMR period of this podcast.
Exactly. And she also keeps resting across my arm that I'm trying to use to drink coffee. So I just want to explain what those sounds might be.
Things that I've encountered.
But first, I want to jump back to why you're not like racing to buy an Oculus Quest headset right now. Why? Because you can borrow it for free from me.
There are a couple of reasons.
And steal my Netflix.
My life at the moment isn't focused. There's not a whole lot of time for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And the entertainment time that I set aside, I want to be more flexible than virtual reality is, really. Because you need to be, it's a participatory kind of technology. It's best if you can move around in a space. When it's virtual, it's best if you can interact, and I do other things, honestly. And the actual hardware isn't something that I personally would invest in at the moment because I don't think the roadmaps are compelling enough in any of the hardware to make me go, I think if I invest in this now, that I'll be happy in a year with this device, which is frustrating. I want it to have a life like a laptop purchase where I'm going to buy a laptop, I'm going to invest $2,000 or $3,000, and I'm going to have it for 3 years, and it's going to work decently. And I'm
even though this costs like a tenth of that.
Right.
Okay, no judgment. I was just curious.
Right.
All right. So that's your history with it. I mean, I guess I'll jump in with my history unless you have any other past
Do it, because
experiences.
I also want to get into what you consider for our definitions of virtual reality and augmented reality. I want to get back into that. So let's hear your history first.
Okay, Webster.
Not his definitions.
All right. I remember first seeing virtual reality in person. I think I'd seen it maybe in movies, but I can't really remember. At Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. One of the coolest amusement parks in the United States, though I haven't made it to that many. But shout out to my Midwestern folks who also got to the point.
Wait,
over.
This is in Ohio?
Yeah.
Ohio is considered the Midwest?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started on that, because all this stuff of like Oklahoma thinking of themselves as Midwest, like.
But aren't they the Midwest?
No. Yes.
I'm from Pennsylvania, and Ohio touches Pennsylvania, and we consider ourselves to be the East Coast. We're going there.
We're going to what? I consider Ohio. I guess I consider East Coast anything that actually you're never either touches the Atlantic Ocean or at the right side of your state. I guess the east side of your state. You're not more than, I don't know, a few hours drive.
Are you probably also intuiting everything that's east of the Appalachian Mountains?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think of the Midwest as a place where people grew up eating tuna fish casserole and ham on buns. Yeah. So you didn't grow up in the you didn't grow up in the Midwest because you're grossed out by the idea of tuna fish casserole, and the first idea that comes to mind is like, oh man, do I have any cream of mushroom soup?
Gross.
So, anyway, I don't care if other people where they think of Ohio as the Midwest or not, but I consider it the Midwest. And so I remember as a kid going to Cedar Point, and like on the way in, as one of the side attractions that you could pay extra for, which we never did because we were just lucky to go to Cedar Point, and we're going to also spend $20 to play a game for 5 minutes. But seeing like this sort of covered like pavilion with like round railings and a dude with the VR headset on, and like I'm sure there were like cables coming off of it because it certainly wasn't standalone back then, and you could go and like do something in VR. And this would have been probably the maybe early 90s. This is our first time I ever saw VR.
So that's pretty early.
Dang, that's awesome. And then nothing. Like,
yeah.
Nothing happens with VR for a long time.
On the consumer market.
On the consumer market, or any other way that I'm really aware of. Except, yeah. And then all of a sudden it pops back up with, I'd say, eCampus at UAF is like, got a VR setup in the TV studio. And I'm like, what? Like, this is amazing, you know? So, and that required having multiple position sensors mounted in the ceiling, connected to with the headset tethered to a computer. And it was expensive, and it was like labor intensive to get this whole thing up and running in the first place,
right,
just to get it set up. But then to actually use it, like, was kind of tedious.
And you had to go to a place to use it.
And there was one place you could go to use it. And there was a lot of options for games, and they were pretty wild. But it was sort of, it felt buggy. And I remember like needing a lot of instruction before I could show my students how to use it, and bringing some friends in occasionally to just show them what it was, and it being pretty cool, but feeling like you needed to be trained on it. And then I guess it was like a year and a half ago or something, I went to eCampus to your your kind of tech guy there, Sean.
Sean's the tech guy.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Well, you're all tech people, but like it's he doesn't really design classes. He just handles the video.
I'm just gonna let you keep talking.
You can correct me if you like. Anyway, and I just went to him and I was like, I want to do VR. What should I do? And he's like, buy an Oculus. He didn't even have one, but he said this is like the new thing and it's cool. And so I bought it and it was awesome. And I just realized I completely forgot Google Cardboard. That was the first thing.
That was the first thing?
Google Cardboard was the first time I actually got to do VR myself. And that was, do you remember when that? I know it was after 2010 because I remember it.
It's maybe 2017, 2018.
Okay.
I'd have to look.
And that was a piece of cardboard that you put your phone in and it had a couple lenses and you hold it up to your face and it would use the camera and the inclinometer or whatever the motion sensors accelerometer in the smartphone to tell when you're moving around. And that was amazing. I remember watching a movie promo.
2014.
2014. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was like free, but it was the first time I'd been able to do VR and just to do it with your phone. And it was really lousy quality, but still amazing because it's taking the resolution of your phone and basically cutting it in half since it has to use half of the screen for each eye. That was incredible. And then delving into, which after that led to a bunch of other companies making their own basically headsets for your phone until finally Facebook, what are you laughing about?
Oh, Google Cardboard, the way you just described it, it reminds me of those little projector things we used to have when we were kids. I can't think of the name.
Projector things we used to
They
have
had
when
like
we
the
were
little wheel of film and you would click through.
Yeah. Viewmaster.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a really expensive Viewmaster.
Cardboard? Cardboard
Yes.
was like free. Except for the phone.
Except for the phone. Jeez.
But right, yeah. Yeah, it's like actually Viewmaster was better than Cardboard in many ways. The image is really clear.
They were really clear.
But Viewmaster actually came out with its own VR thing.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, and so this is something I bought my daughter for Christmas one year. And it was a Google Cardboard, but like nice and made out of plastic. And it came with apps that would allow you to do certain things. But you held it up to your face. It didn't even strap to your head.
Viewmaster's like, oh, we've been doing this for years. We got this.
We got this. And then they decided, no, never mind. But it was pretty cool. And it was basically the 21st century Viewmaster. And so I forgot about that. And those were cool, but, it was kind of lame. The resolution was so bad. It's just your phone, getting the phone in and out and all that. But there were like roller coaster games those would like practically make you fall over. Right. Even on those things.
I get a little whooshy just watching the roller coaster at the beginning of a movie. So on Cardboard, it's great.
You mean the one that where like popcorn comes flying up?
Yep. That's the one.
Yeah, we should say VR is not for everyone. If you suffer from, if you get motion sick, it will be a nightmare for you. But anyway, so I forgot about those. That's where it kind of became accessible, was using the phone for it. And then, yeah, then they had the really fancy ones, which were kind of high-end consumer. Like, really, I don't know, would you call what eCampus had even really at a consumer level?
It was. Like, I could see people, people spend a lot of money on, like, gaming computers. Mm-hmm. So I think if someone's really willing to do that level of investment, there are people, yeah.
It was consumer if you're the kind of consumer who has a water-cooled PC.
And, yeah, there are a lot of people that do.
Yeah. So then Oculus came out, and for me, Oculus was just a major revolution in VR, making it, solving so many issues and making this amazing technology really affordable and really accessible to people who didn't want to do all the research on what PC should I buy. And on top of that, basically zero instruction. Now, I mean, tech, so I can hand you tech without instructions. But I gave you Oculus with no instruction whatsoever. Had you ever used Oculus before?
No, but I've been in VR before.
Right.
And yeah, so that visual language is similar.
It it really doesn't require any instruction or setup.
No.
There's no, like, you have to boot up this app and make sure that the sensors can find the headset and all this blah, blah, blah stuff that was happening before. I mean, my friends who bought one are some of the least techie people I know.
And the way that they set up what is a start space, a home space, is really similar to like this vernacular of home spaces that you see when you boot up a smart TV.
Right.
So it was more intuitive having those experiences in other technologies.
Though they can still screw it up. I spent longer than I wanted to today just trying to figure out where my apps were in my Oculus 2.
Really?
I haven't been on there in a while, but it's driving me nuts. It used to be really easy. Oh. You just like go to library and there's all your apps. And this one I was like, where are my apps now? So yeah, they got a little what do you call it? The GUI or issues. Anyway, so that's kind of the history from my point of view, kind of getting you up to present today. So shall we talk about like what's going on with VR today? And I guess we could get back to like what
recently.
Yeah.
Microsoft has put out like a little PR campaign for Microsoft Mesh. Mm-hmm. So they have these VR meeting spaces now, which they're using HoloLens for, I believe.
What's that?
So they market HoloLens as a mixed reality experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's a piece of hardware?
Mm-hmm. It's a headset similar to Oculus. They call it mixed reality because you have this pass-through version of the world, and you have virtual information too. So it can be immersive, and it seems like you can also have a direct view of reality as well.
Wow. I have not heard of this. That sounds awesome.
Well, yeah.
Except it's Microsoft, but Oculus is Facebook. So
that's why I made that face.
You're doing the deal with the devil no matter what,
right?
Who you go with.
It's Microsoft, and I don't have anything against Microsoft because they've done a lot of really innovative things like in that realm of VR, but the headset's still rather big. It's small compared to other headsets. I like that you can view reality directly, but it still looks low resolution. So when you have somebody join you in a virtual space, you can tell there's a camera that's projecting them from a front-facing view, and then their back is really just kind of this trailing wind looking thing, like
Creepy.
Early Jedi and like the original Star Wars movie.
Yikes.
Or you can be an avatar, which those avatars really just look like Second Life avatars, a little less racy and a little bit more appropriate for the office.
So can I just go buy one of these things right now? How much are they?
Oh.
Are they connected to a computer? Are they standalone like Oculus?
They're standalone like Oculus, and they are on the website, but let me go there really quickly. HoloLens isn't a new thing, but the Mesh is.
Okay.
That's like their new exciting thing.
Well, I can talk while you look that up if you want.
I'm looking right now.
And so for those not familiar with Oculus, it's standalone. It's I think $300 at the moment. It's awesome. I went so far. One of the problems I was having was wearing glasses in them. The original Oculus was bigger, so it was easier to wear glasses in it. The Oculus 2, the visor is smaller and it's way more uncomfortable to wear glasses. So I actually shelled out the money for prescription lens covers, which came from like Poland actually.
Oh wow.
Which was pretty awesome. And I'm very happy with them. So I can, if anybody out there wants to is so into VR that they want to have prescription lens adapters, we'll have the link up for where I got mine, and I was quite happy with them, and they allow the VR experience in Oculus to feel more immersive because the glasses are kind of throwing me off. Plus, I think it's really easy to scratch the lenses, and then you start to get little, like a smear or a scratch, and that, again, it kind of throws off the VR experience.
Yeah, as soon as you get some pitting, it's terrible.
Yeah, but you found them?
I did. HoloLens 2 is available for purchase. They are $3,500.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
And they're standalone?
Let me show you a picture. Yeah,
okay.
That's what they look like.
huh. He looks like an idiot.
I feel like you're biased because you like the Oculus.
I'm biased because I discovered the Oculus first, but...
Well, I like this setup a little bit more just because it's the form factor seems a little bit more wearable and it's more like a pair of glasses. Like you can flip them up if you're used to working with Optivisors or any kind of visor setup. I think this would be something you could easily become comfortable with.
Okay. Yeah, it's gotten better with Oculus, and so there's now you can double tap the left side of the headset and it will automatically show you video of the world around you. So yeah, and Kristen is showing them to me again, and I continue to think they look stupid. But that's okay.
I really like how this bias is playing out.
But anyway, Oculus is just, I mean, if you're interested in getting to VR, I mean, I have not tried a lot of other things that were standalone like this that didn't involve your phone. But I have been 100% thrilled and pleased with both the original Oculus and the second one. Other than the glasses are really hard to put on in the second Oculus.
I mean, for what they are, I think they've done a really good job creating potential outlets for entertainment for using Oculus. And that's been great. Like they have games. You can go on what seems like virtual vacations, just like out in nature. You can watch video, which is actually a really interesting experience. One of the videos that's available when you're in the home screen, you don't have to do a lot of scrolling for it, is the, what did they call it? The Sun Ladies, which is about these women who are fighting in Kurdistan, I want to say. And it was much more, because it was immersive, the story felt much more real.
True, yeah.
And that was cool.
And helping you feel like you're actually there is amazing.
It does. And it's, it's not tricking you, making you feel like this story is happening around you. But when you're even just, I was standing in my living room watching this video, but the characters in this video were standing in front of me like a person would stand in front of me. Like they were tall, like I was. I was looking at them in the eye, which is a wholly different experience than watching something on a screen halfway across my living room.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that is a bit of a struggle with VR is bandwidth, basically. There's a lot of cool stuff that you could do with these headsets, but it's gonna bog down your Wi-Fi. That's been a problem for me. There's a lot of cool videos, but they're really slow to download, and that can be kind of frustrating. And that's one of the few areas where I really feel the pain of my less than ideal internet connection up here is with when I break out the VR.
I was just on a MiFi, and I live over the hill, and I didn't experience any issues.
Okay.
So I was impressed.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Maybe yours is better than mine, but
that's right.
I end up downloading stuff and watching it later because otherwise it just feels very frustrating to get like 5 seconds in a pause. But I've played some games in it, and there are a number of like the kind of games I go for are like sort of what do you call it? Sort of puzzle game type things. So there's a kind of cool one where you're an astronaut on Mars exploring an abandoned Russian space station.
Is this like the virtual equivalent of Myst?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, you're alone there. There's some kind of creepy stuff going on.
That's cool.
And you're basically figuring out, like, if I turn this lever and connect this thing, will it open the door so I can get on to the next thing?
Oh, it's like an escape room on the moon.
It's pretty much on Mars, yeah.
Oh, on Mars.
A Mars escape room kind of thing.
Huh.
And in terms, so we talked a little bit about how it's pretty much a solo experience. There are some games that allow for a kind of cool interactive experience. I had a game party. I had a sort of like board game party at my house back when we were allowed to get together. And one of the things that we did for that was we played a game in the Oculus where one person is trying to defuse a bomb and a group of other people have the manual on how to defuse it. And so the person in quest has to communicate to the rest of the group what they're seeing. And then based on what they say, the people with the manual go through and say, okay, you need to do this, this, this to defuse this portion of the bomb.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's a person basically locked in a virtual room with this bomb, and you can customize it's basically like a suitcase. You can customize all sorts of elements of how difficult it is to defuse the bomb, and then you like print out the manual and give it to people. It's generally good to like give each person one sheet with how to defuse a particular part of the bomb. So say I'm seeing these, like hieroglyphs, and then the person with the hieroglyph page will be like, okay, what order are you seeing them in? And then talk them through it. So there's definitely efforts to make a more immersive experience, plus the possibility of playing with someone else in VR, which I haven't done that much with. On top of that, there are venues, so you could go watch a concert in VR, which is pretty awesome.
Would you prefer to watch a concert in VR or on TV?
VR.
Okay.
I think you'd have more of a sense of a communal experience because you'd be able to see the other people and who are there. And yeah, I think it would mimic that actually being there experience.
So how come I feel like the elephant in the room now, how come these VR goggles aren't solving all of the COVID woes of people feeling alone?
Oh, well, they do cost $400, which to the person who's been laid off because of COVID, spending $400 on a headset's probably not their favorite idea.
Absolutely.
It's also not, it's not that amazing. I haven't even really tried it, so I can't say how incredible the interactive experience is with it. But it's not, you're not going to forget. Yeah, there's a fly. I've had flies for like a month now. I don't know where they come from.
There's a fly in here. It's the winter.
It's normal when there's like a warm day that one like resurrects itself, but
weird.
I don't know where. I think they might be coming from a plant.
Oh.
Because I don't have like open meat anywhere around here.
No, but you do have a pineapple in your kitchen.
Yeah, but they came before the pineapple.
Oh.
But I wonder if something in the soil of my plants is doing it. Anyhow, I think VR could be kind of a solution. It just hasn't been adopted as fully. And yeah, it's $400 or $300 for a toy.
And you already have it, but it's not solving anything for you either.
I don't need solving. I'm not a lonely person.
I'm not judging. I was just saying.
I've embraced quarantine.
Okay. Calm down.
So, but yeah, I would, what has been hard is not being able to travel, especially from, I thought it's starting to get the half and half, so we know we're reaching that moment in the podcast. But being in Alaska, long dark winters, and there's not, unlike other places in the world where if you need a break, you can drive an hour to some adorable little town and spend the night there. We don't have too many of those around here.
Yeah, you have to go to the exotic land of spare room to get away.
Right. So VR is an escape, has been somewhat useful for me. I've done a little bit of that. There are some like nature trek games where you can basically like kind of drop yourself in the ocean or on a beach, and I've tried that a little bit.
That's cool.
The resolution just isn't that great still, even with the high resolution of Quest. And there are also just the cool virtual tours that are available now, which we could talk about at some point too, but they're not VR based. But
are these the tours they have on Amazon?
Yeah, and other places have them too. But
okay,
where it's basically a Skype custom tour.
You're just along as a person joining by camera?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
But I would love that. I would love to be able to be dropped in VR in a sort of telepresence way.
That would be cool.
That would be pretty awesome. So there's also apps where you can draw and, and create things, which I thought, that might appeal to you as an artist.
I've tried it. The problem that I ran into is once you create this thing in a virtual space, how do you move it into meat space? Mm-hmm. So there is an artist that I watched. He had put a video together. He had come up with a way to sculpt in a virtual reality space and then take that model and change it to a 3D model where you could print out the pieces of the sculpture and then cast them in bronze. So he made a large cast bronze head, which was really cool. Mm-hmm. And that was a really neat proof of concept. That I like. I'm not inclined to just make things in a virtual space that are going to stay in a virtual space because that's what I do at work. Mm-hmm. And I've made lots of websites and they just stay these virtual things that are just made of pixels that don't weigh anything and have to change. It's a lot of work that actually just disappears. It feels really ephemeral. I don't like that.
That's why I hate email. You spend all day on email. And
exactly.
You can't stand back at the end of the day and like you can with a stack of wood and
right.
or even mowing the lawn. I like to go out later on in the day and admire the reward of my labor. But you can't do that with email, which is why I just hate doing it. So yeah, I can see that. And I think for me, that sort of design, it would only really be useful if I could then export a file that I could 3D print or something of that nature.
Exactly.
Other than that, have you had any memorable VR experiences or things where it kind of shook you?
No, that's I think another reason that it's just not something that really spins my dials. Mm-hmm. It's fun the way watching TV is fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it appeals to me in some ways because I am so anxious for the future to come here. It's a chance to sort of step into that future. And there are some very cool Oculus games that allow you to just kind of live in a futuristic world. There's one where you get to interact with a robot. It's a little, it's not great for repeat play, but what that game and First Steps, I think is what it's called. And it's, I believe, built into Oculus as kind of here's a little show of what you can do. But you're in like a trailer and there's this robot, which looks kind of like a Commodore 64 that can kind of fly around and you can interact with. And it just feels very realistic. And when I first encountered that game, one of my thoughts was, this is a world I just want to kind of hang out in. So what if I created a physical world as sort of a canvas for this VR app so that I could go and sit down on the couch that's depicted in the game and just chill out there with this robot guy for a while in this space. It's kind of a sunny trailer. There's like a cool little suction cup gun thing that you can shoot for a while or whatever. And I thought, this is a place where I would like to just like sit and read a book. And then it crossed my mind, like, well, I can't read a book in there because it's a virtual world. But what if I could pull a book off the virtual shelf and load it up and just sit in this world and read a book for a while? I would really enjoy that.
Would you sit in that same space and just like browse like you would browse on your laptop too?
Sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
Just to give me a place other than my couch or my dining room table to work. And, in Fairbanks in November or December, it'd be amazing just to feel like you're in a sunny place. There's like the top vent of this trailer is open, that kind of, it made me wonder, could you kind of fake yourself out? And that led to other things because that blew my mind a little bit, such as there's things I've been wishing I could build. I wish I could build myself my own virtual space station, just a place that would be kind of like a grown-up fort.
Have you ever been in a virtual world? Where you can do that?
Been in a virtual world?
Yeah, like you could build a space station in Second Life.
Yeah, but can I engage with it in VR?
So that would be the next step.
I've been in Second Life a little bit. Creeped me out a little bit.
That's creepy. Especially if someone's running after you with their pants down.
Didn't happen to me, but But you do occupy a whole different world than I thought existed in many ways as a woman. But anyway, so that's what it kind of dawned on me. Like, I don't have to make the whole world. All I need to do is make the canvas for it. And then in VR, I can generate all of the different details that I want. Mm-hmm. And so I can, if I want to make a space station for myself, I don't need to go, buy all the parts and stuff. All I need is to nail together a bunch of plywood until I have the basic foundation and then map on the VR graphics onto it.
Have you done any Minecraft in VR?
No.
It's kind of, Minecraft is Minecraft, but...
Right. So yeah, it's generally down those lines.
Would you play Legos in VR? I think that would be fun.
It could be fun to maybe build a classic kit or something.
I'd hang out with kids in VR and play Legos. You would have unlimited pieces. That would be fun.
I feel like we're working on a VR sales pitch for you, and by the end, you'll be like, okay, I'll buy one. But the idea that VR, then, I mean, you get what I mean? Like, I could change this whole living room into, the space station and just map, like, instead of an ottoman, this is a control center or something, and map sort of augmented reality style, map stuff onto it, except I would never actually be seeing reality, but I could touch and sit on VR because I had mapped it so closely with the VR world. You're giving me that smile that makes me wonder what I just said.
What is VR and what is AR?
Oh, that again.
That's interesting. I mean, you're describing what the metaverse is as described in that book, Snow Crash, essentially. Like you log in and you're in this virtual space that looks totally different, that feels immersive, and you go and do things. Like, people go in there so they can go to work, let's say, and they want to be in that space to work. Yeah,
and so kind of what we were talking about with AR, like, who cares what your house looks like? Put on your VR headset, as long as it's got, like, 4 walls. It doesn't even need windows. You just live in VR and you map in the VR world what you want your house to look like over, and you can change it however you want. You can change the views and all these things. And I've had some semi-creepy experiences like that, like basically watching Netflix on a virtual couch. I would like turn the lights off in the house. I'm like, I don't need the lights on anymore because I'm not looking at anything else. So I'm just sitting in the dark in a virtual living room watching Netflix. And why, I built a theater for myself in my basement with a 100-inch screen. Why did I bother? Because I can have that in VR, that similar experience. And that's what kind of blew my mind was, why? Well, that's kind of the end of needing to build things. We can all live in giant mansions if we want to. All we need is a space of a certain size, and maybe some of these walking VR treadmill type things.
Oh, those are weird.
Yeah, but
that's the thing I struggle with when I'm reading like a sci-fi book that's describing VR. That's a detail that's not explained, or if it's a detail that's not explained, I have a hard time suspending my disbelief. Like, if you're in a space that's virtual, are you thinking that you're moving? Are your legs actually moving?
Right.
That's hard. That's a hard one for me to wrap my head around.
And it brings up some ideas to me about Upload, that TV show. They address some of these things about how if the VR world doesn't mimic your real world enough, it can create issues, such as if you never sleep.
Oh, that's like Avatar. Bathroom.
Yeah, I haven't seen Avatar, believe it or not.
How have you not seen Avatar? That's also kind of like, it encroaches on that. Is it virtual reality? I guess if surrogates is, Avatar is.
So anyway, that kind of was amazing to me in that it felt like now what I want is a space that I can modify for VR use rather than a space that just serves one purpose. So why don't I tear out the theater downstairs and the theater seats and just make that an open room with maybe some sort of a few couches here and there that I can push around to match up where couches exist in the VR world that I created, and make that a VR, make that my holodeck.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just bought a Pac-Man, one of those cheapo Walmart arcade versions. Like, why don't I just install a Pac-Man emulator inside my VR world? Why do I literally have a Pac-Man arcade game right now? That's unnecessary. The hitch is, when you want to have a party, when you want to interact with other people.
Yeah.
That's why I wouldn't tear that apart, because is everyone going to come over with their Oculus headset? Like, that still doesn't quite work. But those are some of the things I thought about, along with the idea of prolonged VR. What was the word I'm looking for? Prolonged time in VR. And meaning, like, what would happen if you spent an entire month in a VR headset?
Oh.
Would you really start to believe it, that it was real? How would it kind of warp your sense of reality and mess with your brain? And I know that I've looked online, and there are some YouTube videos of people who spent 24 hours in VR or something like that. But it made me wonder, like, what if you took a whole month and spend it all in VR?
I'm just curious what it would do to your eyesight.
It's true, because you're focusing like 3 inches away.
Yeah,
so that would get messed up.
Yeah, your eyes don't actually have to do the work of focusing far away on things.
Yep.
Huh. Yeah, that'd be creepy.
But other than that, what do you think about the idea of spending a month in VR? I'm going to guess it sounds like more of a prison sentence than it would be fun.
I'd really need to work up to that. I like being outside and moving around. Like that. Uh-huh. That's something that I don't want to give up. And it's not.
What is outside?
It's not the seeing different things. It's moving my body. That's
okay.
important.
You can move your body in VR. There's plenty of exercise games. That's part of the reason I don't like to play it, is because I'm too lazy. I always have to stand up. I played a boxing game, and you get all sweaty, and then the inside sort of fogs up from your sweat. You can still move in VR. There's all sorts of moving games.
It would be an interesting thing to fall back on for winters here, when it's too cold to go outside and you want a little bit of green space. But I'd like them to have some smell-o-vision too, because I like, immersive experiences need to also smell like things and taste like things, and that is lacking at the moment.
Yeah, the only thing that would bug me is that focusing so close to your face. That would be, I feel like when I finally took the goggles off, I'd have like the mother of all headaches.
Yeah.
But other than that.
And you would have helmet head. Yeah,
and big old raccoon imprint. And, there's like people I would like to see. It would be, I definitely wouldn't want to do it while my daughter is still, in high school.
She'd have to come visit you in VR.
Yeah, she could come visit me in VR, but it's something that, once she goes off to college, I'd be more open to the idea of it. A month in VR. But I'd want it to be really good, high resolution. And there are some things that would be tricky, like having it map movable things. Like if I want to pour myself some water and set it somewhere, I need VR to remember where I put it.
That, even just getting facial expressions right, I think is important. Otherwise, you can't have a conversation with somebody if the resolution of Rob's making a face.
Is it hard to talk to me with his face?
I should take a picture for this episode post. Speaking of, yeah.
Oh right, I'm gonna do that. But so in terms of, one of your concerns would be the human interaction element of it too. Could you have what if it just beamed in, like a Zoom call, and you could see someone in 2D?
I mean, yeah, Zoom calls.
Although I have a 3D camera, in theory. In theory, this could be really incredible, and there's just not that complex solutions to some of these problems. Just have the VR headset recognize a certain pattern. Put a QR code on your glass, and so the headset's going to see that real world pattern and go, okay, there's the glass there.
I think what you're describing to me is a mixed reality space then, because you have a glass. Your glass is real, but it's also an object in this virtual world now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas if you have somebody you're trying to talk to in a virtual space, I mean, that person's face doesn't need to be the face that you would see in real life, but it should either map or express whatever that person is emoting from their end.
It'd be funny if you like secretly mapped faces over people, your ugly friends.
Oh, do you have ugly friends?
I have lots of ugly friends.
Oh my gosh.
I'm kidding. I'm just being a provocateur right now. But it would be interesting if you could customize avatars for your friends without them knowing.
Oh, man.
This is a little bit of Black Mirror-y here. But speaking of Black Mirror, again...
What if you did that to your significant other?
Oh, wow. Well... That plays nicely into the Black Mirror episode that I would highly recommend people watch if they are of a maturity level they can deal with it. But I think it's one of the first episodes, if not the first episode, where two guys who I think they hadn't seen each other in a while, bros, who were buddies for a long time, but kind of went their separate ways, reconnect, and then start hanging out together in VR in a basically like Mortal Kombat type environment, totally immersive. They put a little thing on their brains, and it's basically like VR in your brain. It's not like, so it feels real. Everything feels real. And they have an affair because one of them has a female avatar, and it creates, and that's when I was like, I am sold on this show because this is really weird and interesting thought experiment.
It'd be the ultimate bromance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, I won't ruin the episode, but it creates this very interesting sort of question of that VR interaction, which you've alluded to a little bit with me talking about being by format, But this is an actual person, not an AI that you're interacting with.
Right.
But with the idea of VR being so immersive that you could have a relationship with another person who is an avatar, and it wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter what their real world gender is. And so someone who is, it's very interesting. The way the episode deals with it, I think is a little bit odd in some ways. And I don't want to give away the ending, but yeah.
You've mentioned it before, but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So I'll watch it.
Mm-hmm. But sort of the fundamental question of what happens when VR becomes a full body experience and how that complicates a real world relationships.
Mm-hmm. I have no comment at the moment. I'm trying to process this.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, at that point, it's less, you're not dealing with awkward hardware at that point because it's a direct neural interface.
Right.
So all of the senses are engaged.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It feels totally real because your brain is being fed information just like you're fed information when you touch something.
Right.
It's just artificially feeding that same signal to the brain, so it feels like you're touching something. It feels like you're moving even if you're not. I mean, yeah, things could get, relationships could get very different that way. A heterosexual and a homosexual could have a relationship together.
How?
Someone who I could have a relationship with another man.
You could.
I'm heterosexual, but if he was, was in a female avatar,
that's possible for you?
It's a possibility. How would I know?
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting
questions, of course. And if it feels totally real, the only thing is it has no like real world impact. But that's getting pretty. We're sort of accidentally, and I think segued into the future because we're talking about Black Mirror. Is there any more present day VR stuff where VR stands today, or things you feel about where, VR's potential as of this very moment?
As of this very moment, I don't know about this very moment. There's a lot of, I guess, eyewear centric hardware coming out that is kind of emerging in this mixed reality space. So you have Amazon coming out with their glasses. You actually have a pair on the way. And
Thanks for ordering those.
yeah, Facebook also has a pair of glasses that they're coming out with, or
Oh,
that
really?
they're working on. I don't know when they're going to be available for purchase.
And are they like Amazon in that they're audio only?
They're similar, and I do believe they're audio only, but don't hold me to that because I just didn't spend a lot of time looking into it. But to the extent that sound is also input, I mean, they're somewhat immersive. And so in that, again, the continuum of virtuality, where on one end you have reality, and it's just like the pure real world that we're all used to dealing with. And on the far other end is this extreme virtual space where it's wholly immersive and you can't tell that reality, that virtual reality, from actual reality. Everything in between is this sort of, it rides along a gradient. Is it augmented reality? Is it augmented virtuality? Is it a mixed reality? Or is it like there's this ubiquitous computing where like things that you're just interacting with in the real world are connected to information or data or like control something. So they're all sort of coming in, like developing in this space. I'm just going to call mixed reality because it feels like the further we develop it, the harder it's going to be to separate them from, like, is this augmented? Is it virtual? I think it's really interesting when it becomes this mixed reality, because then, you know, you can be in a real space with somebody and it's just have either additional information or feel like you're in a different space without actually having to be in a different space.
I'm enjoying a bit here, sort of the awkwardness of trying to imagine what the future holds. I like the idea of someone 20 years from now listening to this and being like, wow, yeah, they were like really confused about how all this stuff was going to work.
I don't have a vocabulary for it. It's not something that
Right.
I grapple with every day. So imagining how to talk about what I'm imagining in my head is still really a new thing.
Yeah, and so in trying to project where does this go forward, there's certainly all kinds of things it could do. But again, humans don't, my experience with 3D TVs and Google Glass and whatnot is humans will reject technological advances if they can't fit fairly seamlessly into their lives. So you could say, well, we're all going to be wearing AR glasses that are like goggles, like ski goggles, that can shift between total VR or some sort of mixed AR VR situation, and we'll just be doing that all the time. But humans are still really set in our fashion sense. And one of the reasons Google Glass bombed, I think, and one of the reasons I don't see people wearing full face goggles or that Microsoft HoloLens thing is because we're still a herd animal where most of us want to blend in.
And if you don't, you're usually penalized.
You're penalized in one way or another with a negative attention or being branded as a certain type of person. And so I can see AR making big strides and having that.
So you touched your glasses
embedded in glasses
as you're saying that. So glasses are the form factor you imagine that in.
First.
Okay.
I think we are a long way from contacts, I'm sad to say.
So being a long way from contacts is one thing. Having contacts be the thing that garners mass adoption is another thing.
Yes, that gets around the fashion thing too.
Right.
Okay.
Is it worth it? I think if you take the technology to the ultimate end, what makes the most effectively convincing virtuality, would you install something like a Neuralink where you have this direct brain to computer interface that would give you all of these seamless experiences, but also you would have a piece of hardware in your head?
Yeah. So I can see those things down the road. And I think people would eventually, once proven safe enough.
Well, Elon Musk, he's already there.
Doing it with the pigs.
Right.
Yeah. But I guess one concern I have is, are things like Quest, and I forgot to mention PlayStation VR. That was really one of the first VR experiences aimed directly at consumers.
Did you have a PlayStation?
No, I wanted one desperately, but it was too expensive.
Okay. How much was it?
Well, all told, like, if you wanted to buy the PlayStation and the VR headset and everything, it was coming up to like $1,000.
Yeah. See?
And it's still not cheap.
Yeah.
Because I've been like, maybe it'll come down now that Oculus is out. No, this stuff is still expensive. So, I worry that Oculus is going to go the way of 3D TVs. It will be a fad. People think this is awesome, and then they'll get bored of it. And that will mean advancement and stuff will kind of slow down.
I think they definitely still need to develop because, I mean, just from my own experience, I wouldn't buy an Oculus myself because it's clunky and I don't want to wear it on my head. And it's a lot to pack. Like, it's big. I wouldn't pack it on a flight somewhere.
Although I'm glad you bring that up. If I know you accuse me of interrupting you and not paying attention to what you say all the time. And you're right. I completely agree. I'd like to remind everyone I donated a kidney, so I can't be that bad. So, yeah. As horrible of a person.
Virtue signaling.
As horrible as you might think from just listening to me on this episode, like, for the record, no matter what I do in my life, they're going to have to put at the end, but he donated a kidney, so he wasn't all bad. He was pretty bad. But before I forget, I've brought them on flights before because it seemed like...
For the actual flight?
For the actual
That's
flight.
A good idea.
Like, hey, here's a cool way, because most people hate feeling trapped on an airplane. What if you could virtually take yourself out of that? And also the privacy and things that come along with that.
Did it work?
I didn't use it. It's because it's just a little bit socially awkward. Plus, it can be kind of exhausting. Sometimes I just want to sleep. I don't want to try and use it. But yeah, I think one thing that you will probably see once we start flying again is a lot of kids and maybe some adults whipping out their Oculi on these 5-hour flights that we all know so well from being in Alaska. What?
I know, my family is...
What bothers you about that?
They keep wanting to plan family trips, which is great, but I'm even after being cooped up for a year, the thought of a multi-leg flight that'll take 11 hours is just too much still. It's too long. Traveling overseas every once in a while is great, but spending that amount of time and landing on the East Coast is a little bit, it's a letdown.
You have to really want to go where you're going.
I know.
Because it really is brutal. It's a test of your determination. Yeah. Especially for tall people like us. So, yeah, so that, I guess that's kind of, and another thing I'm a little bit frustrated with is the limited apps that are available, and they're expensive a lot of times with Oculus Quest.
I noticed that. I was surprised at how expensive the apps are.
There's a lot of $20 apps in there that
Right.
are, maybe 6 or 7 hours worth of entertainment, and then you're kind of done.
Huh.
Also, I was very disturbed to find out that your game progress does not come along with your new headset.
Oh.
So there's some insane hacker way around to do that. But when I got my Oculus 2, I was like, great, I'll log into the Oculus. Once I log in, everything should carry over, right? It's just a bunch of numbers of like where you were in this one game. And I'd gotten pretty far, almost finishing the Mars game. And it's just like, square one for everything. And I was just like, well, I guess I'm going to finish those games in my old headset before I come back to the new one. And then why do I have these games on the headset anymore? If I beat it, I'm not going to play it anymore, probably.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
So that's a major pain in the rear with the Oculus systems. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on the future or present of VR?
No, I mean, that covers everything that I wanted to cover. I mean, I look forward to seeing what happens as far as development goes. I'm excited that people are investing a lot of attention in development and in both virtual reality and augmented reality. So I expect that both of the technologies will eventually converge, really, to help this technology be more accessible to a consumer market.
Yeah. And I do want to say that in terms of the future, I think one thing that we can expect to see more of is virtual travel. And that will be something that I think will push VR headset sales, is the idea of being able to drop into any one of these locations around the world and be able to interact and walk around and really feel like you're there.
I think that's really a great thing for people who aren't mobile.
Right.
Who
or can't afford to travel.
Or can't afford to travel or just can't leave the place that they're in. I think that would really, short of actually being there, be a great alternative. Yeah.
Yeah, and right now the best example that comes to mind is the Anne Frank house. There's an excellent app on Oculus that's a recreation of the Anne Frank house with all sorts of cool overlays. And you really, I mean, you feel like you're there. It's very powerful, and you don't have to fly a bunch of kids to Amsterdam, but they can still get that experience, especially if you've read the book maybe in a class, and now kids can go virtually walk through the annex.
That'd be cool.
It's really awesome. And other like space-based, sort of the educational side, I think there is some potential for education and making education much more fascinating and engaging. And then, as a bonus for making it this far in the episode, I'm giving someone out there $1 billion idea if they want to pursue it. And if they do pursue it, I would love to have my name associated with some amount. But interstellar VR tourism, starting with VR remote control vehicles on the moon. We shoot a rocket up to the moon. We drop, a dozen Mars rover-like things with 3D VR cameras on them, and we charge people $500 for 5 minutes of driving around and looking. And while you may never set foot on the moon, you can feel like you're on the moon, and you can explore the moon.
You can go racing.
And you can even race, there'll be a no bumping sign just like at the amusement parks. But imagine that. I mean, how much would you pay to be able to put on a VR headset and in 3D be placed on the moon and be able to drive this thing wherever you wanted it to for 5 minutes? How much would you pay for that?
Not $500.
Wow. That you're destroying my business model here.
Yeah.
Because I would spend thousands
Really?
and thousands and thousands for the opportunity.
I might part with $50.
Oh my gosh.
Hey.
To literally like control a vehicle on the moon.
Yeah, there's no cachet.
Really?
That cachet for me is not there. I would still just be like, all right, I'm just driving an RC car somewhere.
On the moon?
Still.
I would spend.
That's why I'm willing to shell out $50.
I would entertain $5,000 for 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Seriously?
But I'm a huge moon freak.
Like, you'd have a huge delay too.
No, it wouldn't be that bad.
Well, it wouldn't be responsive like it is down here.
It wouldn't be instant, yeah. But I mean, and of course it would have to be, well, I don't know. You could relay it through satellites. It might be. But yeah, that's how you do it. You relay it through satellite. There wouldn't be a lot of delay. It's pretty quick. I mean, look, they talked back and forth on the moon. It wasn't like they were like, it's one small step for what? What's that? It's one small step. That was instant.
There's a reason we don't do this podcast on Zoom. That's all I'm saying.
I would gladly pay $5,000 for 5 minutes of driving
Wow.
an RC car on the moon with a recording of it, with it being in 3D, with
For $5,000, I would set up a fake set with a little RC car and be like, hey, Rob, guess what I set up?
just like they did the first moon landing.
Exactly.
All right. Well, on that note, shall we move on to things that blew our minds?
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
Now, normally this is when I just talk about my favorite book, How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. But
You need to do one.
for a break, and this is one that is not like that I learned something. It's something I've never seen before that I saw for the first time this week. That amused but also slightly traumatized me.
Oh, wow.
I got Chinese yesterday because I don't know anyone else, any other adult human, young human who will eat bamboo panda. I'm like the only person. I don't know how that restaurant stays in business.
Interesting.
Because my daughter who will eat at the Chinese buffet won't eat there. And I know no other friend who eat there, so I have to go get it by myself. So yesterday, because it's my birthday month.
Happy birthday month, Rob.
Thanks. I went and I opened up my fortune cookie.
Yeah.
And I see this weird, it's like colored with a QR code on the back.
It is. That's interesting.
And it says, if a wig is used to fight hair loss, it may be tax deductible. There's a QR code. It says, Tax Act, file for less and get more. They sold the back of my freaking fortune cookie.
What?
Fortune. And then the other side, it says, you will live a life of luxury, period. And it just
Clearly.
lists numbers. It doesn't even say they're my lucky numbers. They're not even pretending anymore. There is advertising now on the back of fortunes in fortune cookies.
That makes me sad.
That was what blew me away.
All
What
right.
blew you away?
So I was listening to a podcast. The podcast is called Material Matters. And normally they interview artists that are working with different materials. Pretty straightforward idea. But they had...
It sounds like a segment of Sesame Street or something like that. Material matters.
Right. That's how I feel. It's just like Sesame Street for adults.
Okay.
This woman that they recently did an episode on, her name is Annie Potts.
That sounds
Or
incredibly...
no, Alice Potts.
Oh.
Not Pepper Potts.
Yeah, I know Pepper Potts. I think
Okay.
I just knew a woman named Annie Potts. Anyway, cool.
Alice Potts.
Does she make pots?
She does not make pots, but she did go to the Royal Academy of Art. But she did her research on sweat, human sweat.
Ew.
And, well, it's interesting. Like, she spent a long time learning about sweat and collecting sweat and what your body chemistry does when you eat certain things, you know, like all the things that you put into your body, how that affects how your body perspirates.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up growing crystals from sweat, which I think is amazing. And it's a beautiful thing. Essentially, you're growing minerals from a body, which I think is
Not
a really
amazing if you've ever been a teenage boy. There's some times where I took my socks off and a whole...
I don't want to know what
Bag of
how you're going to
diamonds
finish this
practically fell
sentence. No,
Anyway.
stop. So anyway, listening to her talk about her research was really interesting. I have a whole new appreciation for sweat. I already shared this with you, but she said...
Not only did you... But you shared a video of your finger sweat with me, which was
Oh,
really
I forgot about that.
kind of creepy.
Yeah, well, hang on before I share the finger sweat, because that just drives this one point home. She said, aside from working out, the average human being sweats like 200, I think she said 286 gallons of
That's right. You told me
water a year, which just blows my mind. That's just sitting around and breathing and like walking places, going up and down stairs. It's not going to the gym. It's not running, nothing like that.
Which when you first told me that, I thought she misplaced a decimal point. But it makes sense if you think about how much water you have to drink and take in with food and whatnot.
That's true.
And even I think you might get some from the humidity in the air. That sort of adds up to you'd want to be taking in that much water every year or more.
We don't, up until the point that I had put my finger under that microscope, I didn't realize how much I actually do sweat, not feeling like I'm sweating at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll post the video of finger sweat. It's just, I was looking at my finger,
Put a
my
link
resting
to it
heart rate.
so that people who go to the website can choose if they want to see it. It's not that bad. Partly the resolution is kind of tough. So you're looking at me like, what am I looking at?
Mm-hmm.
And I was prepared to be grossed out, but it was kind of, it was
disturbing.
almost pretty. Maybe I'll have to watch it again. But it's sort of like a interesting.
It's pretty in an appreciation of the natural world sense. It's disturbing in this is happening on my body every moment of the day sense.
And it felt better knowing it was coming from like your fingerprint than like under your arm or something like that. That would be a little bit weird. But seeing your finger sweat was kind of neat. It's kind of like going to Yellowstone. It's like mud pots and stuff.
It's little roiling pools of minerals. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, cool.
That blew my mind.
Wait, and just to jump back, it was the 280 pounds of sweat that blew your mind?
It was all of that.
Oh,
the fact that she had decided to do her research on growing crystals from human perspiration. I think. I mean, what?
I want to see what those look like.
Yeah.
What color were they?
I actually didn't look. I didn't get that far. I was like just listening to her talk about her project. I think I'll post.
That's
a picture
pretty
of her.
impressive. We're just listening to someone talk about it is blowing your mind without actually
She was so excited about it and so invested in the process. And the way that she described talking about her, like she had spent a year working on this, and her peers were making things like handbags and like pieces of art that you would conventionally think of as pieces of art. And so when time came for her to share her project, like she felt really embarrassed. Like, for all of the time she had worked on this, she just had like a small crystal to show. So I think the way that she chose to tell that story was really interesting. And that was enough for me. Yeah.
Cool. I want to see the sweat crystal.
I'll find a picture.
All right. So one of the most fundamental parts of this podcast was to figure out what topic we talk about when. And we started off with an extremely simple system. You pick one week, I pick the next week.
Then you messed it up.
And then I messed it up. And then you messed it up too.
I didn't mess it up.
Yes, you did.
I didn't.
So I messed it up because I got so excited I accidentally picked for 2 weeks in a row. And I gaslit Christen into thinking that it was my turn again.
Right.
But then you messed it up because last week you said 4 choices, and I thought there were 4 choices you wanted to make because I was insisting that we do your week this week because I stole your week.
And I just wanted to go back to normal.
And you just wanted to go back to normal. So next week is your choice.
It is.
Great. What are you going to choose?
But you came with choices for me to pick from.
No, I didn't.
I thought you said you had some things to pick from.
No.
Are you sure?
I said, this is one of our many miscommunications, but no. I mean, I said that was a system we could use, but I didn't realize that we only did that for this week as a solution to me stealing the
so
other
you thought
week
we
for
could
it.
have used it, but you didn't come prepared?
I just didn't even know what we were doing.
What are we
but I
talking
100%
about?
did not come prepared, I guess.
Yeah.
As usual, I rely on my life experience, which is what got me through a lot of high school tests. World history, who studies for that? I'm going to rely on my experience with the world as a 16-year-old.
I'm starting to feel like the future of this podcast isn't as bright as I thought it would be.
Well, we don't know where it's going. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Well,
so would you like me to pick?
No.
Or you have one?
I do. I
Great.
really want to do the
something fun, something interesting.
Rob has his fingers crossed and his eyes closed.
What's it going to be?
I'm curious what you're like. What is? Imagine the thing that you're hoping it will be in your head.
I was just making drama.
Oh.
I trust you.
So yeah, I didn't know what I was going to pick actually because I didn't think about it too deeply. But I really do want to do the biohacking.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just saw today and sent you the Gatorade stickers you can put on your arm, which will somehow sense how much you sweat and then tell you what Gatorade you should drink.
Yeah. But I want to cover biohacking in a broad sense.
Oh, wait, that's biometrics I'm thinking of.
So that's okay.
Okay.
So part of that is biometrics. What I want to cover is sort of broad, and then if we want to do another episode on something specific. So I want to cover self-quantification, but also biohacking in the sense of people that are augmenting senses and microdosing to see what happens with their performance. So I want to explore all of those things.
Okay. And just to give us a little clearer preview, since I'm not 100%, biohacking senses, briefly, what are you referring to there?
For, let's see, some people try to augment their senses by having magnets embedded under their skin.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that. All right. And then what was the other one that you...
Microdosing to enhance performance or in some way affect performance.
And is this an embedded dose of something that is...
Nope. It's sort of an experimentation.
And by microdose, you mean very small doses of stuff.
Yeah. And they use different compounds.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to have to review the notes on this one because I have more questions than I have thoughts.
Yeah.
Which is novel.
Okay. I'll keep notes all week. You can follow
write a
along.
bunch of great notes, and I promise I'll read them this time.
Okay. And part of it will definitely be self-quantification. So you have an Apple Watch. It's counting your steps for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's about it. My phone is also doing stuff. But yeah, the Apple Watch is the main one. And I definitely, every time I go for a walk, I tell it I'm going for a walk because otherwise it nags me for the whole walk, which drives me nuts.
What does it nag you for?
It says, looks like you're on a walk. Do you want to register this walk? No.
Oh, gosh.
And I don't want to tell you to go away because I got 2 pairs of gloves on because it's 10 below right now. And finally I learned, like, I just have to tell it I'm going on a walk or it will not stop nagging me.
That's terrible.
And
Google Fit just tells you went on a walk. It doesn't ask you.
oh, I don't know why. It should just know.
It knows when you go on a bike ride. It knows when you go on a run. It knows when you go on a walk.
It's Santa Claus.
That's really disturbing.
We're going to end on that. Thanks, Kristen.
You're welcome, Rob.
You're not going to thank me back this week? Nothing to thank me for?
No, thank you. It was very fun.
Thanks for listening to the In Stuff podcast. If you'd like to join the discussion or see links to the things we referenced in today's episode, feel free to pop on over to instuffpodcast.com. That's the letter N, stuffpodcast.com. If you're enjoying the In Stuff podcast, check out my other podcast, Dark Winter Nights, True Stories from Alaska. In each episode, we share amazing true stories from Alaska, told by the Alaskans who experienced them. The New York Times recently called Dark Winter Nights the best winter podcast for storytelling lovers. Check out Dark Winter Nights, True Stories from Alaska, wherever you get your podcasts, or at darkwinternights.com. The In Stuff podcast is brought to you by ScratchBand, the brand new way to help you stop touching your face. Why is everyone telling you to wash your hands these days? Because they're covered with germs. Every time you touch your face, you're helping to put those germs into your body and make yourself sick. Until now, ScratchBand's patent-pending design allows you to scratch your face with your wrist instead of your fingers, shielding you from those gross hands. Made of medical-grade silicone, you can sanitize it in the dishwasher, washing machine, or even a microwave. So stop touching your face and making yourself sick, and join the evolution. ScratchBand. More information at scratchband.life.